"Stand down, David, and get your rigs off my site. You're done here, and we're keeping your bond." Those were the words Marcus Vance spat at me, a smug grin plastered across his face as he stood on the edge of the massive excavation pit. I looked down at the $350,000 performance bond document in his hand, then at the idling yellow excavators. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a punch. I just looked him dead in the eye, adjusted my hard hat, and said, "Understood, Marcus. We'll be packed up by 5. He thought he'd bankrupted my family business. He thought he could steal our custom shoring design and hire cheap labor to finish the job. What he didn't know was that he hadn't just fired a subcontractor. He had just pulled the plug on his own $50 million tower. My name is David Miller. I am 52 years old, and I have run Miller's Shoring and Excavation for 30 years. I graduated from Georgia Tech with a civil engineering degree back in 1996, and since then, I've spent every day in the mud and diesel exhaust of Atlanta's construction sites. My father started this company with a single, beat-up backhoe, believing that honest engineering was enough to build a legacy. When he passed the business to me, I made it my mission to specialize in deep foundation shoring and excavation. In a city like Atlanta, where steel towers rise out of red clay, you can't just dig a hole. You have to secure it, keeping the surrounding earth from collapsing into the pit. By 2026, the market was booming, but margins were razor-thin. Large general contractors were squeezing subcontractors to the bone, hiring aggressive, young project managers who cared only about spreadsheets and bonuses. That's where my daughter, Sarah, came in. Sarah is 26, a brilliant civil engineer, who joined our company in 2022 after completing her master's degree. While I ran the field crews, Sarah took over our compliance, permitting, and advanced engineering. She dragged our old-school operation into the digital age, using 3D soil modeling software to design retaining systems that could withstand extreme lateral earth pressures. In April 2025, we landed our biggest contract, a $3.5 million subcontract for the deep excavation and shoring of the Grand Horizon Tower. It was a 40-story luxury condominium development in downtown Atlanta. The site was tight and logistically nightmarish, sitting a mere 30 feet from the I-75 connector highway. Digging a 40-foot deep hole next to an 8-lane highway carrying 300,000 vehicles a day requires extreme precision. One failure in the retaining wall, and the highway embankment would slide into the pit, causing a catastrophic failure of the interstate. The general contractor was Vance Landmark Group, a $120 million firm known for a cutthroat attitude. Marcus Vance, the 45-year-old senior project manager, was the founder's nephew. Marcus was a textbook corporate climber. He wore pristine white hard hats, expensive leather boots that never touched mud, and spent his days screaming at superintendents from his air-conditioned trailer. From day one, Marcus treated us like dirt, constantly pushing us to accelerate our schedule and looking for opportunities to back-charge us for minor delays. To secure the excavation wall next to the highway, Sarah designed a sophisticated temporary tieback system. We needed 70-foot-long, high-strength steel tiebacks drilled deep under the highway easement to anchor our soldier piles. Drilling beneath a state highway requires extensive permitting. Sarah spent 4 months coordinating with the Georgia Department of Transportation, submitting soil boring logs and structural calculations. Because of the high risk, GDOT granted the temporary encroachment easement permit, registered as GDOT 7702-TE, specifically and exclusively to Miller's Shoring and Excavation. The permit was bound directly to our proprietary vibrating pneumatic drilling license and our specialized $10 million underground liability insurance. GDOT made it clear that if any other contractor touched those tiebacks, or if our insurance lapsed, the permit would become instantly null and void. We were the sole named permittee, holding legal responsibility for the structural stability of the highway embankment. By August 2025, our crews were on site. We brought in our specialized drill rigs, including our custom hydraulic rotary drill, worth $600,000. We began installing soldier piles, timber lagging, and drilling the tiebacks under the highway. The work was slow and dangerous, but my crew was the best. We monitored the inclinometers on the highway shoulder daily, checking for even a millimeter of movement. Everything went according to Sarah's model until we hit the 25-foot mark in October. Our drill bits ground to a halt with a high-pitched metallic shriek. I jumped down into the pit to inspect the cuttings. It was a massive, unmapped vein of solid Georgia granite stretching across the eastern half of the site. The original geological reports provided by Vance Landmark Group had indicated soft mica schist. This granite vein would require heavy pneumatic impact hammers and specialized diamond-tipped core barrels, costing an extra $680,000 in labor, equipment wear, and fuel. I immediately called a meeting with Marcus Vance. I brought the rock cores and reports to his trailer. "Marcus," I said, "we've hit a major geological anomaly. This is solid granite, not schist. It's not in the contract documents, and it's going to cost us an extra $680,000 to get through it. I need you to sign change order number 4 so we can mobilize the heavy hammers." Marcus didn't even look at the rock core. He smirked and leaned back. "That's your problem, David. You signed a lump sum subcontract. You dig the hole, you deal with what's in the dirt. I'm not paying you a single dime extra, and if you fall behind schedule, I'll charge you $10,000 a day in liquidated damages." I kept my voice steady. "Marcus, the contract states that unforeseen subsurface conditions differing materially from the reports are ground for a change order. We can't drill through granite with standard augers. If you don't sign this, we'll have to stop work." Marcus leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You stop work, David, and I'll terminate you for default. I'll call your bonding company. Keep your $350,000 performance bond and hire someone else to finish. Now get out of my office and start drilling." I walked out of the trailer, my hands shaking. I knew Marcus was setting a trap. He wanted to force us into bankruptcy, take our bond, and use our designs to finish his project on the cheap. But as I walked back down to tell Sarah, I saw the quiet determination on her face. She looked at the granite vein, then at the highway above us and whispered, "Let him try, Dad. He has no idea what he's playing with." For the next 3 days, the Grand Horizon site was a battleground of mechanical strain. We tried to make progress on the sections of the wall not blocked by the granite, but Marcus Vance kept his project engineers on our backs, measuring our daily advance. Every hour we spent chipping at the granite with our standard rotary drills was a waste of money. The friction heat burned through our custom carbide teeth, and the hydraulic lines on our rigs vibrated so violently, I feared they would burst. Sarah spent those 72 hours documenting everything. She photographed the granite, logged the ruined drill teeth, and recorded every email, text, and phone call with Vance's management. In construction, paper is your armor. She also kept a close eye on the daily inclinometer readings along the I-75/S85 connector. The retaining wall was holding, but without the remaining tiebacks installed, it was at its structural limit. The soil pressure behind the lagging wall was mounting, and we needed to finish drilling the tiebacks to anchor the structure securely. On Thursday morning, Marcus Vance escalated the conflict. I was standing near the edge of the pit, talking to my foreman, Bobby, when Marcus walked up with 2 men. One was a notary, the other was a representative from Apex Grading, a cheap non-union outfit notorious for cutting corners and underbidding projects. "Miller," Marcus said, his voice carrying over the idling machinery, "I'm giving you a final 72-hour cure notice. You either mobilize 3 more drill rigs and start hammering through this rock, or you're off the project. We have a milestone payment tied to the completion of this excavation, and I'm not letting a stubborn old-school subcontractor ruin my schedule." I turned to look at him, arms crossed. "Marcus, I've already told you. We can mobilize the pneumatic hammers today, but we need the signed change order for the extra $680,000. I'm not spending $50,000 a week in extra diesel and specialized drill steel on a promise. Sign the change order, and the hammers will be here by noon." Marcus laughed, a condescending sound that made Bobby's jaw tighten. "You don't dictate terms to me, David. The contract says you perform the work directed by the general contractor. We handle the disputes later. If you don't like it, you can sue us. But right now, you drill. I'm not putting my company in a financial hole for your poor planning." I replied, my voice dead calm. The soil logs you provided were wrong. That's a material breach. We drill when the change order is signed. Marcus's face contorted with anger. He pulled a thick folder from under his arm and thrust it at my chest. Then you're done. This is a formal notice of termination for default. You are hereby terminated from the Grand Horizon project effective immediately. We are seizing your $350,000 performance bond to cover the cost of hiring Apex to finish your work and to pay for the liquidated damages you've caused. Get your rigs, your men, and your trash off my site by 5 p.m. today. If I see a single Miller employee here at 5:01, I'm having the police arrest you for trespassing. Marcus was practically vibrating with triumph. He thought he had played the perfect corporate hand. By terminating us for default, he could claim the bond money, use it to pay Apex a fraction of the cost, and blame the entire project delay on us to his uncle, the CEO of Vance Landmark Group. He was going to look like a hero who saved the project budget, while my family business took a $350,000 hit that would likely put us out of business. Bobby stepped forward, his fists clenched, but I put a hand on his chest. Bobby, tell the boys to shut down the rigs, clean the tools, pack the trucks, and start loading the trailers. We're leaving. Bobby looked at me in disbelief. David, we can't just let this guy steal our bond and throw us out. We did nothing wrong. We're leaving, Bobby, I repeated, looking Marcus straight in the eyes. Load the equipment. Marcus's smirk widened. Smart move, old man. At least you know when you're beaten. Make sure you don't leave any of your garbage behind. I don't want your junk cluttering my site. I didn't answer him. I walked down the ramp into the excavation pit where Sarah was standing by our primary drill rig. She had heard the entire exchange. She looked at me, her face pale but her eyes sharp. Is it done? She asked quietly. It's done, I said. He served the default termination. He's keeping the bond and he's bringing in Apex. Sarah nodded slowly, a cold, calculated smile appearing on her face. He really doesn't know about the GDOT permit, does he? Marcus doesn't look at permits, Sarah. He only looks at his bonus structure, I replied. Let's get the rigs loaded. We need to be off this property by 5. We spent the next 4 hours in a flurry of activity. My crew worked in silence, chaining down the heavy drill rigs onto our lowboy trailers, packing up the hydraulic hoses, the spare drill casings, and the surveying equipment. The Apex crew was already standing by the gate, waiting like vultures to take over the site. Their foreman walked around the edge of the pit, looking down at our soldier piles with a smug grin. Marcus stood on the balcony of his office trailer, sipping coffee, watching us pack up. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. By 4:45 p.m., the last of our trucks cleared the gate. I stopped my pickup truck at the gate, rolled down the window, and looked at Marcus, who had walked down to the entrance. Have a good evening, Marcus, I said. Go find yourself a good bankruptcy lawyer, David, he sneered. You're going to need one. I rolled up the window, put the truck in drive, and pulled out onto the busy Atlanta street. As I drove away, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the Apex crew immediately moving their cheap equipment onto our excavation site. They were about to learn that digging next to an interstate highway isn't just about moving dirt. It's about who holds the key to the vault. And we were taking that key with us by the time we got back to our modest office in Marietta. The sun was setting. My crew was dismissed for the weekend with full pay. I wasn't going to let them suffer for Marcus Vance's greed. Sarah and I sat in our conference room, surrounded by blueprints, permit folders, and black coffee. Sarah opened her laptop and pulled up the documentation for the Georgia Department of Transportation Temporary Encroachment Easement Permit, registered as G.7702-TE. This wasn't a standard building permit you could transfer with a simple signature. Because the excavation ran adjacent to the interstate connector, the state was incredibly paranoid about structural integrity. If that highway embankment shifted even an inch, the pavement would crack, causing a multi-vehicle disaster. Here's the lock, Dad, Sarah said, pointing to the screen. She highlighted Section 12 of the permit, titled Transferability and Liability Maintenance. The clause was explicit. The permit was granted solely to Miller Shoring and Excavation based on our specific high-risk $10 million underground liability insurance, our custom engineering design registered under Sarah's professional engineer seal, and our proprietary vibrating drill permit, which minimized ground settlement. The permit mandated that the named permittee must maintain active, daily engineering supervision of the tiebacks and hold sole liability for any ground shifting. If the named permittee ceased operations on the site, or if their insurance coverage was withdrawn, the permit would automatically become null and void. Furthermore, Section 14 stated that any work performed on the easement without an active, validated permit would be treated as a criminal encroachment on state property, carrying immediate stop work orders and heavy fines. Marcus thinks he can just slide Apex into our slot, Sarah said, but Apex doesn't have the specialized insurance for interstate shoring. Their liability limit is only $2 million, and their safety rating is too low to qualify for a GDOT encroachment permit. More importantly, the permit is in our name. Marcus can't transfer it to Apex because GDOT rules state that easement permits are strictly non-transferable. So if we're not on site, we can't legally supervise the tiebacks, I said. Exactly, Sarah replied. Since Marcus officially terminated us for default and banned us from the property, we no longer have physical access to the site to monitor the inclinometers or guarantee the stability of the highway embankment. Therefore, we are legally required to notify GDOT that we are withdrawing our engineering oversight and terminating our liability coverage. We cannot be held liable for a structure we are not allowed to inspect. Sarah spent the next hour drafting the letters. She wrote with the cold, clinical precision of an engineer. The first letter was addressed to the District 7 Permit Director at the Georgia Department of Transportation. It stated, "Please accept this formal notice that effective October 23, 2025, Miller Shoring and Excavation has been terminated from the Grand Horizon Tower project. As we have been barred from the property by the general contractor, Vance Landmark Group, we are unable to perform the daily structural monitoring and engineering supervision required under temporary encroachment easement, permit number GDOT 7702-TE. Consequently, Miller Shoring and Excavation hereby withdraws all engineering responsibility, structural guarantees, and our $10 million liability insurance coverage associated with the temporary steel tiebacks currently extending under the I-75, S-85 connector right-of-way. As the named permittee is no longer operating on site, we request the immediate suspension of permit number GDOT 7702-TE. The second letter was sent to the City of Atlanta Bureau of Buildings and the Chief Structural Inspector. It was even more direct. We are writing to report an unmonitored structural hazard at the Grand Horizon Tower excavation site. As of October 23rd, the 40-foot deep shoring wall adjacent to the I-75, S-85 connector is no longer under certified engineering supervision. The temporary steel tiebacks anchoring the highway embankment are currently unmonitored due to the termination of the design engineer of record, Sarah Miller, P.E., and the shoring contractor, Miller Shoring and Excavation. Any continued excavation or construction work on this site by unauthorized parties poses an immediate risk of lateral earth movement and potential collapse of the adjacent interstate highway embankment. Sarah attached our official termination letter from Marcus Vance as proof that we had been legally forced off the site, along with the daily inclinometer logs. On Friday morning, at precisely 8 a.m., Sarah and I hand-delivered the letters. We walked right into the GDOT District 7 headquarters in the City Bureau of Buildings, delivering them directly to the heads of the departments and getting them stamped as received by the official clerks. We wanted to make sure there was a physical, undeniable paper trail. Once a safety report involving an interstate highway is stamped and filed, it becomes a ticking time bomb. No government official is going to risk their career by ignoring a warning that a major highway might collapse into a luxury condo pit. After delivering the letters, Sarah and I went out for breakfast. As I drank my coffee, I looked out the window at the heavy traffic flowing on the interstate. "How long do you think it will take?" I asked. Sarah looked at her watch. "The GDOT permit director is a stickler for rules. Once he reads that letter and sees our liability insurance is gone, he has to act. I give it 3 hours in Apex?" I asked. "Are they going to try to drill? If they do, they're drilling blindly," Sarah said. They don't have our 3D soil pressure models, and they don't know the calculations. But more importantly, they don't have a permit. And doing unpermitted work on a highway easement is a fast track to a federal investigation. I leaned back in my booth, feeling a deep sense of calm. Marcus Vance thought he was playing a simple corporate game. He didn't realize that in the modern construction industry, the real power isn't in the size of your company. It's in the ink on the permits. And we had just dry docked his entire fleet. Monday morning arrived with a clear blue sky. But at the Grand Horizon Tower site, the atmosphere was pure chaos. At exactly 7:30 a.m., three Georgia Department of Transportation cruisers, their blue lights flashing, pulled onto the shoulder of the I-75 S-85 connector directly above the excavation pit. They were accompanied by two heavy-duty DOT utility trucks. Within minutes, state crews began setting up orange traffic barrels, closing down the far-right lane of the interstate. They were deploying emergency sonar settlement sensors to monitor the highway embankment. At the same moment, a caravan of vehicles, four City of Atlanta Bureau of Buildings SUVs, an OSHA inspector's truck, and a vehicle from the state fire marshal's office, pulled up to the main gate of the construction site. Marcus Vance was in the middle of his morning briefing with Apex grading when the inspectors walked into his trailer. The chief structural inspector for the city laid a bright red, laminated document on Marcus's desk. An emergency stop work order and suspension of building permit. "What is the meaning of this?" Marcus demanded, his voice cracking. "We are in the middle of a critical excavation. You can't just shut down a $50 million project." "Who authorized this?" "The state of Georgia did," the chief inspector replied coldly. "We received formal notice that the engineering supervisor of record has withdrawn, and the liability insurance policy for the highway encroachment permit has been terminated. Your subcontractor, Miller Shoring, is no longer on site. More importantly, we just caught your new crew, Apex, attempting to drill tiebacks into the highway easement. You don't have an active permit. As of right now, you are in criminal encroachment of state property." "We can just transfer the permit," Marcus yelled, his face turning red. "Apex has insurance. They can take over the liability today." The GDOT engineer stepped forward. "Permit GDOT 7702T is non-transferable, Mr. Vance. And even if it were, Apex does not meet the safety ratings or the specialized underground liability insurance minimums required for drilling beneath an interstate. Until a certified shoring engineer submits a new design, secures new liability coverage, and obtains a new permit, this site is frozen. If you touch a single shovel of dirt, we will have the police arrest your crew." Outside, the inspectors began wrapping yellow police tape across the main gate. The towering crane in the center of the site was ordered to park, and the diesel engines of the Apex excavators were silenced. For a major commercial development like the Grand Horizon Tower, a stop work order is a financial death sentence. The project was funded by a syndicate of commercial banks, and the interest on the construction loans alone was costing Vance Landmark Group $25,000 a day. On top of that, they were paying $40,000 a day in idle crane rentals, concrete supply reservation fees, and late penalties to future condo owners. Every single day the site was dark, Vance Landmark Group was losing $85,000. By 9 a.m., my phone began to ring. The caller ID showed Marcus Vance's office number. I let it ring. 10 minutes later, Marcus called my cell phone directly. I set it on the desk and watched it vibrate until it went to voicemail. By 10 a.m., the emails started coming. First, they were angry and threatening, written by Marcus's assistant, claiming that Miller Shoring was liable for the shutdown and threatening to sue us for millions of dollars. Sarah replied to the email with a single PDF attachment. Our formal notice of termination for default, signed by Marcus Vance, alongside a copy of the GDOT permit guidelines stating that the permit is automatically suspended upon termination of the permit T. She added a brief note. "Since you terminated our contract and barred us from the property, we have no legal right to maintain a permit or liability coverage on your site. All inquiries should be directed to our legal counsel." By noon, the tone of the emails changed. The threats vanished, replaced by desperate pleas for a phone call. Marcus even sent a text message directly to my phone. "David, please call me. We need to work this out. The project is losing $85,000 a day. Let's get together and resolve the change order. I didn't reply. I was waiting for the real boss to call. At 2:30 p.m. my office landline rang again. This time it was Richard Vance, the 68-year-old CEO and founder of Vance Landmark Group. Richard was an old-school builder. He was tough, but he wasn't stupid. He had built his company over 40 years, and he knew when his people had made a catastrophic mistake. I picked up the phone. David Miller. David. Richard's voice was gravelly and tired. I'm looking at a stop work order that has my name on it, and I'm looking at a termination letter my nephew signed last week. I want to know what the hell is going on. Hello, Richard, I said calmly. What's going on is that Marcus tried to force us to drill through an unmapped granite vein for free, refused to sign a change order for $680,000, terminated us for default, and seized our $350,000 bond. Since he threw us off the site, we withdrew our engineering supervision and liability insurance for the G.Highway permit as required by state law. Now your site has no permit, no liability coverage, and is an active collapse hazard. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. My nephew is an idiot, David, Richard said quietly. He told me you walked off the job because you couldn't handle the engineering. He didn't say a damn word about granite or the permit. We need to fix this. Immediately. The bank is threatening to freeze our funding. We can meet, Richard, I said. But I won't do it on your site and I won't do it over the phone. My attorney's office is in downtown Atlanta. We will be there tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Bring your corporate counsel and bring Marcus. If Marcus isn't there, there's no meeting. We'll be there, Richard said and hung up. The next morning, Sarah and I sat in the conference room of our attorney, Thomas Bennett. At precisely 10 a.m., the door opened and Richard Vance walked in, followed by his chief corporate lawyer and a very pale, very quiet Marcus Vance. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. His pristine corporate confidence was completely gone. We sat across the long mahogany table. Thomas Bennett laid out our terms before their lawyer could even open his briefcase. Gentlemen, Thomas said, we are here to discuss the reinstatement of Miller Shoring and Excavation. But let me make one thing perfectly clear. We are not negotiating our original contract. That contract was terminated by your firm. If you want my clients to step back onto that site, resume engineering liability, and get that G.Dot permit reinstated, it will be under an entirely new agreement, and the price just went up. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but Richard put a heavy hand on his nephew's shoulder, forcing him back into his seat. Be quiet, Marcus, Richard growled, then looked across the table at me. Let's hear it, David. What is it going to take to get my cranes moving again? The atmosphere in the conference room was thick with tension as Thomas Bennett slid the new contract proposal across the polished wood table. Vance Landmark Group's corporate lawyer adjusted his glasses, picked up the document, and began scanning the terms. As his eyes traveled down the page, his face grew increasingly pale. This is outrageous, the lawyer stammered, looking up at Richard Vance. Richard, they are asking for a complete restructuring of the contract terms. They want the full $680,000 change order for the granite excavation paid up front into an escrow account. They want the immediate release of the $350,000 performance bond, along with a formal retraction of the default termination, reclassifying it as a termination for convenience, and they are demanding a $450,000 breach of contract settlement and standby delay fee. That is a total of $1,480,000. Marcus Vance burst out, unable to contain himself. This is extortion. Richard, we can't sign this. We can fight them in court. Apex can finish the job. Sarah leaned forward, her voice calm and clinical, completely cutting off Marcus's outburst. Mr. Vance, if you try to fight us in court, the litigation will take a minimum of 18 months. During that time, the stop work order remains in place because the city will not allow construction to proceed without an active highway encroachment permit and a certified shoring engineer of record. At your current burn rate of $85,000 a day, an 18-month delay will cost Vance Landmark Group over $45 million. Even if you try to hire a new shoring contractor and apply for a new GDOT permit from scratch, the geological reviews, soil structure modeling, and state approvals will take at least 4 to 6 months. That is still over $10 million in losses. Our settlement is $1.48 million. It is the cheapest and fastest option you have. Richard Vance sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the contract. He didn't look at Marcus. He was doing the math in his head, and as a veteran builder, he knew Sarah was absolutely right. The leverage was entirely in our hands. "There's one more condition, Richard," I said, looking directly at the founder of the firm. "Miller Shoring and Excavation will not work under Marcus Vance. If we return to the site, Marcus is banned from entering the excavation area, and we will deal only with you or a project manager of your choosing. I won't have my crew's safety and my company's reputation put at risk by someone who doesn't respect engineering." Richard turned his head and looked at his nephew. Marcus' face was a mixture of panic and humiliation. He looked at his uncle, hoping for some defense, but Richard Vance was a businessman first. "Marcus," he said, his voice cold and flat, "pack up your things from the site trailer. You are suspended pending a full internal audit of this project. And if our legal team finds that you falsified the geological reports or lied about the subcontractor negotiations, the company will be suing you personally for gross negligence and breach of fiduciary duty." "Uncle Richard, please." Marcus started, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm, shaking his head. "Sign the papers, Richard," the lawyer whispered. "We don't have a choice." Richard Vance picked up a heavy gold pen, signed his name at the bottom of the new agreement, and pushed it back across the table to Thomas Bennett. "The escrow funds will be transferred by 3 p.m. today, David," Richard said, looking at me. "I expect your rigs back on site tomorrow morning." "We will be there, Richard," I replied, standing up to shake his hand, "and the job will be done right." By 3:30 that afternoon, our bank confirmed the transfer of the $1,480,000. The change order funds were secured in escrow. The performance bond was officially released, and the breach settlement was cleared. The next morning, Wednesday, the Grand Horizon site was active once again. The orange traffic barrels on the I-75 S-85 connector remained in place, but this time, our crews were the ones working beneath them. We mobilized our heavy pneumatic impact hammers, our diamond-tipped core barrels, and our specialized team of drillers. Sarah was back in her element, standing on the edge of the pit with her laptop, monitoring the real-time telemetry from the inclinometers. The DOT inspectors stood beside her, nodding in approval as they watched our rigs drill through the granite vein, installing the massive steel tiebacks with surgical precision. There was no lateral movement of the highway embankment. It took us 3 weeks of intense round-the-clock work to cut through the granite and finish the shoring wall. We worked hard, but we did it safely, and we did it under our own engineering supervision. When the final tieback was tensioned and locked off, the GDOT inspector signed the official structural safety release, and the highway lane closure was lifted. Vance Landmark Group brought in a new project manager, a veteran builder named Frank, who treated us with the utmost respect. Frank looked at Sarah's engineering models and admitted that our shoring design had saved the project from a potential disaster. Looking back on it now, the Grand Horizon Tower was the turning point for Miller Shoring and Excavation. The $1.48 million payout allowed us to pay off all our equipment loans, purchase a second hydraulic rotary drill, and secure a healthy safety net for our crew. But more than the money, the victory was about preserving the legacy my father had started. We proved that a small, family-owned subcontractor doesn't have to let a multi-million-dollar developer push them around. In the world of construction, concrete and steel are powerful, but they are nothing without the engineering and the legal permits that hold them up. As for Marcus Vance, the internal audit at Vance Landmark Group revealed that he had deliberately ignored the geological pre-construction reports, indicating the granite vein, hoping to hide the potential cost increase to secure his annual performance bonus. He was fired from the firm, and his uncle's company filed a civil lawsuit against him. The last I heard, Marcus was working as a junior residential estimator, far away from any major commercial developments, and his expensive Italian boots were finally gathering dust, Sometimes when I drive down the I-75-85 connector and look at the towering Grand Horizon building rising into the Atlanta skyline, I smile. Underneath that massive tower, 80 feet deep in the Georgia granite, lie our steel tiebacks. They are silent, invisible, and holding up the very ground the tower stands on. And every time a car drives over that stretch of highway, they are riding on the foundation of our victory.